Alright guys, okay, so now we've signed into Weebly. We have all the accounts, we have some things going, we have a name, we have a location, we have all this other stuff. So right now what I'm going to do is just give you a quick overview of pretty much this whole bar here. It can look a little intimidating. Um, don't take it as such. Most of it's pretty self-explanatory. Um, just kind of run through it as best as you can. So the first thing that we should do is let's make a whole blank page. Right now you have this page I've been kind of working on. It's not the best way to get started though. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come over here, create a new page, and as I click on this little page area, if I click on this little plus right here, that's going to allow me to make a new page. So for this one, I'm going to make a standard page. I'm going to give it a name, and so for this one here, I'm going to call it add image. We're not going to hide it from navigation. That means it won't show up here. Is really what it's going to mean. So as long as you leave that alone, we'll be fine. Most of this stuff here, we just kind of want to leave alone. We'll kind of because of what needs to happen and all the things that we can do with this site. I'm not going to cover everything, just mostly the basics. So this one here, as soon as we have a page name, I'm going to go ahead and click done. And then I'm going to get out of that and click on build again. So in this area here, it's just a header there. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a name. I'm going to click here, how to add an image. I like to use title or magazine case for my website headers. And if I make a slight click on the background or where the picture is at, you see how it turns white as I hover over it. If I click on that, I can edit the background. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drag up to resize it because we don't need all of that stuff there. Now again, that's personal preference. And in my case here, my idea is to get information out as fast as possible. And so the more real estate that's taken up by something like a hero image, which is not something that you really need for a classroom website, we can just minimize that. And probably what I'll do here is I'll just kind of make it a little bit simpler, and let's look for cool, simple backgrounds. You do want to be careful about some of your usage, but there's a lot of simple free backgrounds out there that you can just kind of grab. And so in my case here, I'm just going to grab, actually I'm just going to go back to image search. Maybe pull this really cool black wood thing. I kind of like how that looks. So I'm just going to click and drag that over. And so in the Weebly store, I can click here on the background again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the background, go to image, and I'm going to replace it. Now it's going to bring up this image selector here. And so again, in the spirit of adding images to our page, as soon as you click at that, you can search for it, you can find it, you can pick out something out from your favorites. But in my case, I like to make sure I have it from the computer and just kind of drag that over. So as soon as I do drag it over, you can see the background has changed, and the letters are probably not as dark as they could be. So I like to go ahead and make a you want to save it. My bad. I got to hit myself. So as soon as you make this change, you can reposition it. So as I drag it around, I can find a really good spot on how that looks. I kind of like the darker version, but not that dark. So I'm going to drag it down to where it's almost kind of in the middle there. So I kind of like that. So once that's ready, I'm going to hit save. And then what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to make the color just a tad bit brighter because it seemed kind of dark the way that's set up. So by selecting on the letters and then highlight them, I can click on this little down arrow there, and I can probably make it a little bit brighter. I don't like the options I have there, so I can bring up the color picker, and I'm going to go something a little bit more of a stronger white. And so I think it's going to kind of pop out a little bit. Again, this is all about preference, so if you don't want to go with this color scheme, you don't have to. Okay, again, so back to the original reason why we're here. There are a couple ways to add images. You're going to want images for your site for any various amounts of reasons. So I'll leave that part up to you. I'm going to present to you the 3 ways on how to do that. So in this case here, I'm just going to drag a simple image over to it. Now one of the things that you want to kind of be careful about is there's going to be different places where you can drop that. So as I left click and hold, you see where the arrow turns? As soon as that turns into that 4-piece crosshair, just in that area, if I left click and hold, I can drag this into other areas. So if you notice that there's different locations according to that blue line where I can drop that box off, that's going to set my alignment. So if I come and drop it off to the far right, it's going to drop in a new picture to the right of the header. So summarily though, say I make a mistake, I can actually come to this little tab right there, left click and drag again and move it even further around. But in this case, I don't really want it here on the hero image. You don't want to put too many images on top of each other, and since we already have one whole background image around here, that can be kind of confusing. So in this case here, I'm going to drag it right here into this little background area. So now you can see how it's going to fill up that space. And that's again just with the simple image portion. Once I want to edit that, I can go ahead and just kind of look for something else. So they actually have not only the ability to upload your own images, but to actually search their search areas. And it looks like that's only for banners, so my bad. So in this case here, you just go back to my favorite Google spot. And so I like to look up kittens. Kittens are cool. I like them. They're really nice. And they usually bring up very safe search results. So I like these guys here. They look pretty badass. Kind of like them. Now left click and then just drag them onto this little area here. And then in this case here, I'm going to click again back on my computer, which allows me to have this area to left click and drag. So I'll just drag them in, and voila, I have some kittens. You can add as many as you want. So again, just pay attention to that really weird blue line as I kind of move it around. And as you can see, other things kind of respond to that. So if I just kind of drag it around, you can always kind of lay out how that's going to fall. So as we drop in this other piece there, or you saw where that blue line kind of came underneath it, it's just going to place another spot there. So get these rainbow kittens. That's kind of creepy looking, but that's fine. So click on the upload image again and drag it in. So some other options that you may not be aware of, because the pictures themselves are two different sizes, we kind of don't want them taking up that kind of space. So if I click on the image itself, so again, if I were to click somewhere else, turn my box off. If I click on the actual image, you'll have this little arrow here, and you see how it kind of points towards the picture that you're selecting. So you can either edit the image itself, or you can change it outright, or add some other options here. But the one thing I do want you to know is this little square box here that allows you to resize. So if I come in, I can shrink and grow it. Now if you notice that every time I shrink or grow or do anything to it, it's staying in the center. And that's because it's been aligned. So right here, if I click on that picture again, I can switch the alignment of the picture. So I can do a left justify, a center, or a right justify. The spacing has something to do with how much area goes around. So that's something that we'll kind of take a look into later once we start combining pictures with text. But in this case here, you can kind of just ignore that. Captions very important. They allow you to give meaning to the pictures. So in this case, 4 rainbow kittens. And then I just call that good there. And you see it'll show up underneath the picture. Do not confuse this with alt text though. Alt text is something that you're going to need for ADA compliance. It's for screen readers. What's going to happen is a lot of the times instructors, teachers will leave off the alt text, which is supposed to be descriptive of the picture for screen readers to describe it to a person that has a visual impairment. You usually want to use something that's going to be very nice and descriptive. As you can see, they just did a picture, which does not help them. Back in the day, you can probably get away with putting that as a decorative image, meaning that it's just there to make the site look nice and it has no meaning towards the content. But since we are educators and we have to provide a fair and balanced education to our students, we have to be able or be sure that they can also participate. So that means this content's important. So what you kind of want to do most of the time is be as descriptive as possible. So I'm going to say for brightly colored kittens on a tree branch. Some would say that you would even need to go to describe the color of each kitten from left to right. there is not really a way to know that you are doing it wrong. If you are doing it, what will happen is you will only know if you didn't do enough. So always play on the side of caution and always describe more than what you really should. Uh, it's always better to do it now than have to come back and do it all later, because that happens a lot to where you'll have a site built for your classroom, but then 2 or 3 years later you'll actually have someone that has that special disability or that special need, and it would have been way too long, and you won't remember how you did this or how it works, and so you might feel the need to start over or just to completely kill the site altogether. So just kind of be aware that that is something that's going to happen. So anyways, that's done. On this one here, we can edit the image. So once you do that, you'll have these options up here. You can kind of see what they do. Think of this as a horrible version of Instagram, so we can control different versions of how bright the color of something is, or whether it fades from one direction or the next. So you can give a really cool, interesting feature to those. Just kind of, when you get a chance, play around with these and see if there's something that you'd really like to get. Now, I would say on a site like this, you usually want to kind of lay off some of the fancy images, because again, the idea is for content. You obviously don't want to bore them to death with just a wall of text up and down it, but pictures are going to be there to help enhance the overall feeling. The most important thing I think you'd need is either going to be a crop or a rotate tool. It's very important to have those and to get them to work. So just kind of take some time and learn how to kind of use some of these guys there. So save. Okay, so that was a simple overview of just the image tag. What we're going to do now is just kind of go over the gallery and how that works. So same thing, we can drag, bring it over. In this case here, I'm going to half the screen by across. If you notice, we've already split this off into two sections. As you see here from the right side there, there's one blue box, and then there's another blue box. So just kind of be aware that this will not share the difference between these two. You would have had to have set them up differently. You would have had to actually place that inside of here for it to share this one area. So in this case here for this gallery, I want it to be the height of the first top box there. So I'm just going to kind of drop that in. And you notice how it added this really cool divider there. I'm going to kind of make that bigger. And then what I'm going to do here is we can upload a plethora of photos. And I'm kind of tired of kittens already. Let's look at some puppies. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a few puppies here. Okay, so 4 is enough. I usually try to keep these numbers pretty even. So what I can do here is the way this is set up, it says drag gallery photos here, or you can upload from your computer. So if I click, I can actually navigate to that area, but I'm really lazy. I would much rather just find and select them all, drag them right in. And so you can see down there, it's going to give us some progress, and you can see the puppies kind of load in. Now, I don't like how that's laid out. Always having this one orphan picture is kind of weird for me, and so it's just, again, a personal preference, and it's just always something that some people tend to notice. So if I just take that thing there, I can kind of shift it over. Looks like the actual box is not working though. So what I'm going to do is set this up to 2 columns. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the size because that wasn't causing the problem. And then if I click on the gallery itself, it's going to say I have 3 columns, so 1, 2, and 3. So if I can simplify that and go with 2 columns, you can see where that kind of balances out. It's a little bit more symmetrical. I think it looks a bit more interesting. I also don't like the way the rainbow kittens down here are working. So if I wanted to just make that adjustment, I can just kind of come up here and click and drag it up and add it to the bottom of the other 4 kittens. So now I have a little bit more of a balanced area, and I have a gallery here. It's one of these really fun ways of kind of showing more things. We'll talk a little bit more about the enhancements later, but for right now, just getting them in is probably one of your more important parts. So in this case, the next thing is going to be the slideshow. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up some free banners and just kind of make sure that they work in size. You usually want them to be kind of consistent. So in this case here, let's see here, I'm going to put web banners. And that's a horrible search too. Nope. still just as bad. Birds. Everyone likes birds. So slideshows are pretty cool. Just kind of grab these. I'm going to grab these pictures of birds because they're cool like that. They scare me though. They always tend to like try to dive bomb me. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because I'm cool. They just want to be friends. That's the idea. Okay, so last one I'm going to talk about on this video is going to be called Slideshow. So in the slideshow here, same thing. If I were to make this big enough, I'm going to want it to run the whole span at the top, so we just know that this is about pictures. If I click drag and bring it over, I'm going to be very careful about where I place this. Again, you got those blue line, so just kind of be careful about where you place those. But in this case here, I want it to run the whole span of this column here and this row here. And so if I'm not careful, you can see where the blue line's at the top up here. That doesn't cover everything. So if I come over a little bit more, you see where it now covers the whole area. If I let go there, it's going to ask me what type of style I would like the slideshow to be in. And for me, there's quite a few different ones. So when you get a chance, take a look at them yourself. But I just like the simple one myself. It's one of my favorites. Just click OK. Let it load up. It's going to add some special code. And in this case here, just like what you did with the gallery, you can drag the same amount in there. And you just kind of want to let them run. And then once you have all the photos that you need, looks like I missed a couple, but that's okay. I'm just going to hit save. And so what I have now is a really cool slideshow with wrong size pictures. You usually want to make sure the pictures are the same size, so just kind of be careful about that. In this case here, I want to make the I was thinking I can make this a bit smaller. It looks like I cannot. And it's probably because, again, I took the time to make it the full size. So just gotta be careful about that. Looks like these are far more crazier sizes than I want them to be. So what I'm going to do is, if I click on the slideshow itself, I can get some more options like I did before. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to edit some of these photos. So if I click, nope, looks like I can't edit them the way I thought. It looks like you can only drag or edit them and add captions. So I'm going to cancel out of that. And then I'm going to actually go through and make these guys all the same size. So I'm going to stop and find some pictures and make sure that they're all the same size, and then I'll show you what it should look like. Okay, so I'm back. So we're going to start over again. So we're going to add the slider. So again, I want to run the whole span. I like the simple one. Click OK. And in this case, as soon as that's done adding that, we're going to add these photos that I made all the same size. That's what it should look like when you're done. You should always want to make sure that they are the same size. So as they drop in, you can kind of see that we just have some location photos here. I'm going to hit save and make this big again. And hopefully you can see now that as it kind of slides through, it's going to pretty much maintain the same size. And that's really what you want to do to happen through most of it. As you kind of work through this, you can notice here that there's different options. So you can change the type of transition out as they go. So as you click it, it'll slide. It'll mosaic out, which is kind of a cool one I really like. That's pretty nice. Slice is always fun. And fold is kind of a weird thing. They need to quit doing that. Sometimes it's called blinds, but never paid too much attention to that. I like fade. Fade will get it done. Navigation is pretty simple. The style of buttons that are up here, you don't have a lot of control over what they look like, so just kind of work your best on that. Speed is how long it takes before it auto moves from one slide to the next. Spacing, I'm not too worried about that. Captions, you should know whatever captions you add to the photo show up at the bottom, and so forth. Alright, so this is us adding images to Weebly. When you get a chance, I suggest that you kind of just experiment with those three things: the image part, the gallery portion, or the slideshow. Alright, thank you. or the slideshow.